Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.
You're listening to Healthcare Matters, the podcast that pulls back the curtain to help you make sense of complex healthcare economics and policy issues. With us is Dr. Robert Popovian in Washington, D.C. He's a pharmacist, an economist, and the Chief Science Policy Officer at the Global Healthy Living Foundation.
Joining me, as always, is my very good friend and co-host, Ben Blanc, Director of Digital Production and Engagement at GHLF, tuning in from Indianapolis, Indiana. So Ben, are you able to keep up with all of the news cycles and also give us a brief update of what you've been up to at GHLF recently?
Yeah, well, actually, let me start with that, Robert. We've been really busy. As you all know, ACR Convergence just took place in Chicago a few weeks ago. We spent some time talking with rheumatologists, researchers, and other healthcare professionals to share ideas, collaborate, and learn about the latest advancements in chronic disease care. This year, there was actually a lot of excitement around CAR T-cell therapy and T-cell engagers, both of which have big implications for autoimmune and inflammatory conditions. We recorded several great interviews. They're all available now on our YouTube channel, and we'll include a link to the full playlist in the episode description. And Robert, another topic that's kept me quite busy this fall is the release of the latest season of Informed Immunity. And this season, we released 3 episodes, all covering a specific vaccine. The first episode focuses on the flu vaccine, the second episode on the COVID-19 vaccine, and the third episode focuses on the RSV vaccine. And throughout the episodes, we feature amazing experts. That includes you, Robert. We also featured Dr. Tyler Evans, Dr. Scott Roberts, Samantha Peking. You heard her on the past season of the show, and she's back this season. Together, they tackle key questions like what's new with this year's vaccines, why do boosters still matter, and how can adults, especially those with chronic conditions, protect themselves during respiratory virus season. And of course, we'll drop the link to the show page in the episode description. Now, Robert, it's also a special time because it's open enrollment season. See, so much is happening. It's hard to keep track. So about 24 million people buy health insurance through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. Those 24 million people, most of them used to receive tax credits to help lower the monthly price. Without those credits, premiums could rise by an average of 114%, and that's roughly $1,000 a year, and in some cases, much more.
Ben, you're absolutely correct. So that's why the issue of healthcare costs and drug pricing has been front and center recently. I have to say that's one of the reasons also that you saw the big announcement a few weeks ago where President Trump and CEO of Pfizer were in the Oval Office and made some announcements about TrumpRx as well as most favored nation pricing in Medicaid, among many other things, and tariffs in pharmaceuticals. So we're going to cover the TrumpRx issue, right, Ben? I think that's what we want to handle on this podcast.
Exactly. On this episode, we'll be talking about drug pricing reform and specifically that new proposal you mentioned, TrumpRx. It's an idea that's getting attention for its potential to reshape how patients access and pay for their medications. Let's get to it. So, Robert, you recently wrote an article along with your co-author, Dr. William Smith. It's a piece that explores how direct-to-consumer models, rebate reform, and changes to the PBM system, the Pharmacy Benefit Manager system, could make prescription drugs more affordable and transparent for patients. So we're going to unpack what this proposal really means for the future of the pharmaceutical market, and more importantly, for patients, especially those living with chronic illnesses who face high out-of-pocket costs. So Robert, this is a big, complex topic that's been generating a lot of discussions lately. There are a lot of layers to it. So before we get to your article, can you give our listeners a quick overview of what Trump actually refers to and why you and your co-author, Dr. Smith, felt it was important to write this article now? Can you differentiate in your answer how TrumpRx is different from the cost plus drugs pharmacy and GoodRx?
We're happy to do so, Ben. And just to be clear, the reason Bill and I wrote the article and we published it is because we believe that there is some promise in TrumpRx, but several policy issues have to be resolved before patients can fully embrace and benefit from that promise. Now, what is TrumpRx? It's an unknown. I can only conjecture and say what I think it will be, but we don't really know. I don't really think it's going to be a true pharmacy. That means President Trump is not going to be wearing a frock, standing behind them or doing some compounding or filling prescriptions and sending out prescriptions from the White House. I think it's going to be a clearinghouse where patients can go in and probably see different prices for medicines, specifically brand medicines, and then perhaps that they are able to then be forwarded to a website that they can acquire those drugs for those prices. So what is the difference between like a TrumpRx potentially and a Cost Plus or a Costco pharmacy? Those latter two, Costco and Cost Plus, are actual pharmacies. They fill prescriptions, they mail prescriptions. You can go in and order drugs off of their website with a valid prescription from a physician or another provider, and they fill it for you, they send it to you. What is GoodRx is a little bit different, right? GoodRx basically functions as a clearinghouse too, but it's limited. It's limited to a certain type of pharmacies, as well as the pricing is not really what those pharmacies' tendency to be able to give you, but rather what the price negotiation has been done between GoodRx and that pharmacy. In addition, some of those clearinghouses, similar to GoodRx, have membership fees and things like that, so you get different pricing levels depending on whether or not you're a member. My assumption would be that anybody and everybody can go on TrumpRx and figure out what the price out of pocket for their prescription will be.
Thanks for all that background, Robert, and that really gives us a good foundation for this discussion. Now, one of the central issues in your article, and one that comes up often on this podcast, is the role of the PBMs, the pharmacy benefit managers, and how their practices affect what patients actually pay. So in your article, you describe how PBMs play a major role in inflating list prices and driving patient out-of-pocket costs. For listeners who may not be familiar, and at this point, I don't know how that's possible in our podcast because you talk about the PBMs so much, but can you explain how that happens and why reforming the rebate system matters so much?
The rebate model is really an arbitrage model, right? It's the purpose of is to get higher list prices, so then you negotiate lower prices based on rebate contracting, and then PBMs basically retain a percentage of that rebate, whatever that percentage is. It could be 1% all the way to 20, 25, 30%, depending on who the person is that they're negotiating with on behalf of like an employer or a patient or even a government entity. In addition, the rebate contracting triggers things like fees, whether it's rebate aggregators, data consolidation fees, all these other things that come about with rebates. So in essence, what rebate contracting does, it creates a misaligned incentive where the PBMs then prefer higher priced, higher rebated drugs, which provide higher fees to them, because remember, it's a percentage of the list price, and creates an environment where at times PBMs actually prefer brand name medicines, and we've covered this on this podcast, instead of generics that are equivalent to those brand drugs. What also rebate contracting does is that it doesn't transfer the savings to the patients at the point of sale. So if you're a patient that has a coinsurance, which is a percentage of a payment of the retail price of the medicine, or a deductible that you have to meet before your insurance kicks in, those two entities, coinsurance and deductibles, are calculated based on retail price of the medicine. So again, even though they negotiate these huge discounts with the biopharma companies, which can sometimes range between 60, 70, 80% of the retail price, the patient, based on if they have a coinsurance or a deductible, which most of us do these days, do not benefit from them because those two entities or those two out-of-pocket costs are calculated based on the retail price, the inflated price. So again, it's a boondoggle, it's an arbitrage system for the PBMs to make more money, to have higher list prices. So they incentivize to have higher list prices again and again. And at the same time, patient doesn't benefit from any of those negotiated prices.
All right, so that brings us to one of the most interesting ideas in your article, You highlight this shift toward direct-to-consumer drug purchasing, where patients could buy medication directly from manufacturers at lower prices. So, what are the potential benefits of this model, and what pitfalls should patients and policymakers be aware of?
First and foremost, remember the insurance model for prescription drugs, just like all the other portions of the healthcare system, has shifted towards more of a deductible model, right? So you have to meet these deductibles, and all of us have one. I have one. All my family members have individual deductibles they have to meet before actually insurance pays a dime. And I can bet that you probably have that same thing, Ben. And I see you nodding your head. So in essence, we've created a model where we're asking patients to be better consumers because now that they have a deductible, and that deductible is based on, especially on the pharmaceutical side, based on the retail price, we're sort of saying to them, well, go figure out where you can get the best retail price for these medicines, shop around. So basically, in essence, we've introduced consumerism into the healthcare system, especially on the pharmaceutical side. Now, what we need to do is for consumers to give them the tools to be able to price compare. Which pharmacy gives them the best price, what is the best price, and where they can acquire that best price. So TrumpRx gives them that opportunity, but direct-to-consumer pricing is what needs to happen for them to get. But there are 4 things that we discussed in the article that need to happen for that promise to really take effect and for patients to benefit. So hopefully we can get into the discussion of what those 4 policy changes that need to happen for it to really to take off and for patients to benefit.
So, can we now focus on what this actually means for people living with chronic illness, since that's the community that we serve most directly? So, for patients living with chronic conditions who often rely on multiple medications, how might a system like TrumpRx change their experience at the pharmacy counter? And could this model make it easier for them to manage costs, or might it introduce new challenges?
No, I think it can, but again, 4 things need to happen. Let me go through the 4 things, Ben. I think those are important here. Number 1, if you are able to buy and you go to a direct-to-consumer site and you see a price of the medicine that is cheaper than what your insurance company is charging you for out of pocket based on using your insurance card, then you should be able to purchase that medicine from that direct-to-consumer site. And most importantly, that price that you've paid now should apply to your deductible and to your maximum out-of-pocket cost. So in essence, the patient should benefit from being a good consumer, right? They've shopped around, they've checked what the out-of-pocket cost is using their insurance. Now they found a site, for example, through TrumpRx or whatever RX, BenRx, and they figured out that they can get a better deal. Now, when they pay for that better deal, that dollar amount should apply to their deductible. Right now, that's not the case. The insurers basically force them to go through their insurance model, and if they have to overpay for it, then they end up overpaying for it. So in essence, if you don't do this, you're providing the patient with 2 bad choices. The first choice being bad, that they have to overpay through their insurance model, while there's a cheaper one in direct-to-consumer pricing, and they have to overpay so it apply to their deductible or to their maximum out-of-pocket cost. Or the other bad choice is that they become good consumers, they shop around, they find a better price in this direct-to-consumer pricing environment, and when they pay for that, that doesn't apply to their deductible. So it's a lose-lose if that thing doesn't happen. So that's the number 1 thing. It needs to apply to anybody's deductible maximum out-of-pocket cost if they buy it from any of these sites. And in fact, the second thing that we propose is that these sites should also include generics. Right now, generics, consumers have figured out that they can shop around for generics and get better deals like at Cost Plus or Costco or at Blueberry Pharmacy or Freedom Pharmacy. Those dollar amounts that they pay for these medicines, again, doesn't apply to their deductible. So it should include generics as an environment where if the patient shops around for the generic, again, it applies to the deductible. And these websites like TrumpRx or whatever RX you want to call it should include generics. The second most important reason that they should include generics is that patients are not monolithic, right? We just don't take one medicine, especially chronic disease patients. I myself don't have a serious chronic disease, but I still take about 5 pills a night for a variety of issues that I have. So it would be nice if I can go to that website and not only see my out-of-pocket cost for a brand name drug or direct-to-consumer pricing for that medicine, but also how much that medicine may cost me if I go to Costco or to Cost Plus RX, and then including my generic drugs that I may be taking or other drugs that I may be taking. So I can do an overall comparison of all the prescriptions that I have and be able to become a better consumer and more informed decision maker. So that's the second thing. The third thing is that not only consumers should be able to go to these direct-to-consumer sites through TrumpRx or whatever RX that we want to call it, but also employers. So imagine you're an employer, you're a self-insured employer, and you figure out that, oh my God, I'm paying X amount of money for every prescription of the Y drug. While I can go to this direct-to-consumer site and actually pay much lower price for that Y drug for my employees. You should not penalize or block from doing that through your insurance model. You should be able to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to carve it out. For this direct-to-consumer price, I'm getting a better deal to go through BenRx and to the direct-to-consumer site. And therefore, I will carve it out and I will buy all those medicines from that site instead of paying the insurance model cost or whatever their insurance company is charging us. And we already know that this has happened, right? It's happened definitely in the generic space with spread pricing, where there's a different price, much higher price that employers pay for a generic drug versus what PBMs reimburse pharmacies. It's a spread. And again, employers should not be blocked from doing that. So that's the third thing. And the last thing what we say in our article is that, look, we're getting into an environment that certain drugs, we will know the transparent lowest price offered to the federal government through IRA. There's a list of 10 drugs that have been negotiated prices. The next 15 is coming down. We're going to know exactly what the federal government is paying for these medicines. So, for example, if drug B, there's a negotiated price of 70% for that medicine, and that's been published, that's how much the federal government is going to pay for that medicine, then the consumer should be paying that price as well. We should not be expected as consumers, as patients, to pay a premium compared to what the federal government has negotiated. So, if a drug has gone through the IRA negotiation or IRA price setting, that price should not only be available for the federal government through Medicare, but also should be available for all patients that want to pay that price out of pocket through these direct-to-consumer sites. So again, it creates an environment that the patient benefits. So those four things need to happen if we have any shot of making TrumpRx, BenRx, any RX, these platforms to be successful. If not, you're leaving this in a limbo, patients in a limbo, and making another promise from the federal government go unaccomplished and frustrate the consumer, the patient, and everybody else in between.
So, Robert, you just alluded to transparency, system transparency. Earlier in your response, you mentioned making a good deal. And I feel like those two words go hand in hand. So you do make a strong point in your article that these reforms could empower patients and employers to compare prices and choose between PBM negotiated or direct manufacturer prices. So now the big question is, how realistic is that level of transparency in today's healthcare market?
Transparency will happen. It's already happening, right? So we know with these first IRA price negotiated drugs how much the federal government is paying for. We just now need to make sure that the patient who shows up at the pharmacy counter is willing to pay out of pocket because they have a gazillion-dollar deductible, that they get the same discount as the federal government has. And we need to make sure, going back to the first policy we proposed, Bill and I, that dollar amount then applies to their deductible or to their maximum out-of-pocket cost. There is no reason for this not to happen. Look, everybody has a story about how they went through their insurance model and it would have cost them more rather than if they paid out of pocket in cash or went outside the insurance model. I'll give you my own personal experience. I've given it in previous times about generic drugs. This has nothing to do with drugs. Actually, it had to do with an MRI. My eldest daughter required an MRI about 2-3 years ago. It was post-COVID. And we tried to go through our insurance model. He called the MRI facility, said what she had as coverage and everything else. They calculated her out-of-pocket cost for that MRI was going to be $1,300. I told her to hang up the phone, not call back and say you don't have insurance, but but you're willing to pay out of pocket in cash, how much would that MRI would have cost, that exact MRI. And the MRI center basically told her it was going to cost $1,000. So right there, going through the insurance model for no other reason, we were going to overpay by $300. So she was a good consumer, right? We have a deductible. She went outside the insurance model, was going to get a better deal by paying for it directly to the MRI center. But there's no reason why that $1,000 should not apply to their deductible and to our maximum out-of-pocket cost to her deductible. So in essence, this happens every single day. And unless we change the incentives and the model, none of these promises that are being made, whether it was TrumpRx, GoodRx, all these things really will take off until patients can basically benefit fully from being better consumers in this healthcare marketplace and an insurance market that has created consumerism over the last decade.
Thanks, Robert. Your article also touches on the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the broader political landscape. So how do you see current U.S. drug pricing policy shaping the pharmaceutical market in the next few years?
It's not going anywhere. The price setting for pharmaceuticals is going to continue on the Medicare side. Bill and I have written in the past, and we argued again in this article, that it's fait accompli. Most favored nation pricing will occur through the IRA tools that has been provided to the federal government. They can basically set the price based on France pricing or Canada pricing. So IRA has given the administration tools to be able to do MFN pricing, whether we want to call it or not. So that's fait accompli. I think it's happened. It's going to happen. It's already happened. There are ways to deal with it. I think the bigger issue with IRA is it going to benefit patients? And what we've seen so far is that their PBMs are up to their old tricks, that they're going to manipulate the model somehow, that despite losing a lot of money on rebates, because remember, when they suppress prices, the retail prices, the margins shrink too, that they're going to shift the cost somewhere else, whether it's going to be out of pocket for those MFP drugs, or it's going to be increasing the average out-of-pocket spending for seniors, increasing the premium, shifting the cost to the commercial payers, shifting costs to products that are not heavily or at all rebated. They're going to do that stuff. So CMS needs to keep an eye on it for patients to truly benefit from things such a model like IRA. Unfortunately, that's where Bill and I don't believe currently the administration or the past administration or the current administration is set up to really be a watchdog of what the PBMs are going to be doing.
So, Robert, we're at time. So to wrap things up, I want to bring it back to our listeners. There are people who navigate this every day. So if you had to summarize one takeaway from your piece, what's the key message for patients, providers, and policymakers who want a more affordable and transparent system?
I want to be clear. I've been very open about this issue. We need to get rid of rebate contracting. Trump 2.0 needs to go listen to Trump 1.0, do rebate reform like he was intending to do in the first administration of Trump. Until we get rid of that, we're just basically circling the drain. Now, there are things we can do to help the consumers meanwhile, while the bigger issue of rebate contracting is being dealt with. And one of the best ways to do it is that for patients need transparent information about their drug prices, what their out-of-pocket cost is going to be. They need to be able to be rewarded to being good consumers by when they choose to pay cash or go directly to the pharma company to pay that for that drug, that payment would then apply to their maximum out-of-pocket cost or the deductible. I think those are minor fixes that need to happen, and then we can go to the bigger issue of rebate reform and everything else. But meanwhile, I think we need better transparency, better understanding of drug pricing out-of-pocket, and we have that. We have it in the generic side. We have Cost Plus Pharmacy and Costco that are showing us how much patients will pay out of pocket for generics. Now we need to do it for the brands, and that pricing that comes out of pocket for those patients who want to shop around and want to go pay directly, that price should apply to their deductible or maximum out of pocket costs.
Well, thank you, Robert, for breaking down all that information to us. And here's my main takeaway. The conversation around TrumpRx underscores a key truth, that is, real drug pricing reform isn't just about lowering list prices. It's about fixing the system behind them. So by reducing the influence of PBMs, increasing transparency, and empowering patients to compare prices directly, we could move toward a market that's both more affordable and fair, but without structural changes to the rebate system and better protection for patients with chronic conditions. Affordability will remain out of reach for many. But I'm not the expert, so Robert, you have the last word.
Ben, you're absolutely right. We need to deal and fix the big problem of rebate contracting and how it has misaligned incentives. But meanwhile, we can have minor fixes that can move this along with where we want to go, which is better consumerism and healthcare system and better transparency. And first and foremost, patients should be rewarded for being better consumers. And the only way to do that is for President Trump to come out and say that anytime you go through any of these websites and you go directly to the pharma company, or you go to Cost Plus Pharmacy and you go to Costco and you pay out of pocket because you're saving money instead of going through your insurance, that dollar amount needs to apply to your deductible or to your maximum out-of-pocket cost. Period. End of sentence. Move on.
Well, that's a wrap on this episode. Thanks for breaking down all that information, Robert. And to our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you might be listening so you never miss an episode. And if you have a second, help spread the word by rating our podcast, writing a positive review, and sharing with your family and friends. It'll help more people like you find us.
And you have any questions, thoughts, suggestions, please reach out to us. We're obviously going to have in the show notes the article itself, so read it. Reach out to us if you have questions. We would love to have you as a guest on this podcast. You can always reach us via email at podcasts@ghlf.org. And hopefully we can feature you in an upcoming episode. By the way, Ben, we never started to talk about this, but this is our number 10 episode wrap for season 6. So we are going to move on, and our next episode will kick off season 7, which is unbelievable that we've been on 7 seasons of Healthcare Matters now.
I know, Robert, and I think the reason why we didn't even mention it is because guess what? We might be closing season 6, but season 7 will be right back. So you'll probably hear us in another month or so. And before you go, make sure you take a listen to some of our other great podcasts on the GHLF Podcast Network. You can find all of GHLF's podcasts at ghlf.org/listen. He's Dr. Robert Popovian.
And he's Ben Blanc. We'll see you all next time.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.